So there's a whole lot in today's passage, and the first thing is that God expects obedience. And we've seen that all the way through the Bible, really, but this really highlights it. And here you see that there are two types of sin. One is the unintentional sin, and the other one is the very deliberate sin. And the unintentional sin, you see that God says, okay, well, sacrifice a goat or sacrifice a bull. And then the very deliberate sin, which is the story of the guy who's collecting wood on the Sabbath and then he has to get stoned to death. That is the example of this is when you've really deliberately rebelled against me. And although that makes us distinctly uncomfortable reading that story today, certainly where you think, gosh, he's picked up a few sticks and he's been stoned to death, for the people of Israel at that time, they would have been comfortable enough living with that story because they understood the Sabbath to be an absolute key thing for them as a people. This was one of the things that really marked them out from all the people around them. And the fact that this guy is doing it on a day when everybody else is resting means that he is deliberately choosing to rebel against God and against one of God's key commandments. And I suppose the positive thing that we can draw from these two stories is that God is not a legalistic God in the sense that he's out to try and trip us up. He knows and he accepts that we will at times make mistakes, that we will get things wrong that we don't mean to get wrong. We'll slip by accident. And he also knows at times we will deliberately and consciously disobey him. And he makes a distinction here between the two. And of course, we know that we live under the light of the cross. And so the death penalty is not something we will ever have to endure because it's something that God Almighty himself, in the person of Jesus Christ, endured on our behalf. And then the second half of the reading, we come into this rebellion. There's Korah and his little mates, and they rebel against the leadership of Moses and Aaron. And again, here there's some interesting lessons in leadership. Number one is being a leader is really not great. It's a lot of pressure, and sometimes we desire a position of leadership, and you know, on one level, it can be fun and enjoyable to be in a position of leadership, particularly if God's called you to it. But it's never easy. And here Moses has to deal with another rebellion, and this time it's not just the people; it's the people and some key leaders within the community who've all decided they're going to rebel against him. And he responds amazingly, as does Aaron, by actually praying and interceding for the people. Again, you see that they really care. As a good leader would, even when the people are rebelling against them, they continue to pray for them, they continue to serve them, and there's a lesson in there again for us about what is the heart of leadership. And again, you see strongly here that God requires obedience, and that the sin that's very deliberate, that's committed by Korah and his little friends, is bad in God's sight, and so he reacts with judgment again. Now, this judgment is particularly spectacular, but the heart of it is the same thing, which is to go against him and to go against his leaders is not a good thing to do, and he will judge. Now, again, we have to understand that we're reading this through the lenses of the New Testament, so the uncomfortableness of some of the judgment that takes place in the Old Testament has to be squared with the seriousness of the cross and the fact that sin is always taken seriously, whatever part of the Bible you're in. But the good news for us is that Jesus takes it on the cross, and that's where it's finally completely dealt with. At the same time, it's a lesson for us to make sure that we humble ourselves before God, and we take obedience and we take his word and his will really, really seriously.